It's time for Bringing the Heat with Bryan Nolen.
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? It is another edition of Bringing the Heat with Bryan Nolen. Yours truly, alongside my co-host as well as my producer, who just got back from a wild weekend at Bristol, Mr. Trey Lyle at Trey Lyle VT. We're going to talk all things wild Bristol and more. But before we dive into that, we're going to be diving into the Inferno, talking with Truck Series driver Mr. Taylor Gray. We talked a plethora of things and what he needs to do to get his illustrious first career win. So without further ado, let's dive on into the Inferno, Mr. Taylor Gray.
Now it's time for
23 starts for Taylor Gray in the Arc of an Art Series. Could this be the magic one with so much emotion on the line to play out here?
There you see a battle with Raja Caruth and Sammy Smith, but it's Taylor Gray out front, racing with heavy hearts into Phoenix. They leave Phoenix a race winner. And cars are spinning after the checkered flag. The 13 of Souza.
to go into the Inferno with Bryan.
Right now, folks, at this time, I'm going to bring to the program driver of the number 17 truck for Tricon, coming off of a 4th place finish at Las Vegas on Friday, March the 1st. Taylor Gray joined the program. Taylor, thank you so much for coming on the program, my friend. How you doing, man?
Doing good, guys. How are you?
I'm doing well, my friend. I'm doing well. Before we dive into this season, obviously it's just starting with the first couple races under your belt. Let's go back last year, 15th in the standings, 3 top 5s, 6 top 10s. How would you address last year? And then how have you grown from last year at this time all the way to right now?
Yeah, so, last year, it was a little bit of a hit or miss year, right? You'd see us some weeks we'd have a little bit of speed, and other weeks we would be pretty awful, to say the least. But, it was a little bit of an inconsistent year, I should say. But in fact, in terms of, learning from last year, the biggest thing was just, learning how to maximize our days whenever we, it wasn't a very good day, or even whenever we had a pretty decent truck, just learning how to maximize those days and learning how to maximize a truck that necessarily isn't driving the greatest.
Obviously, I should say most people know about the wild ride that you took at Daytona. For those that, most people that are listening to this right now have never done that and never will do that. So if you could compare that to what you have done, what is that like? Obviously, drivers have said that it feels like you're in slow motion when you're flipping. Did it feel like that? And then can you compare that to anything that you've done in the past?
Yeah, it's definitely, everything starts to happen a lot slower. Just in terms of, racing in general, when you're, racing, everything just happens slow. It's kind of hard to explain. But definitely when you start to blow over like that, it definitely slows everything down, and everything gets really quiet in the race car. And quite honestly, I can't compare anything super close to it. I flipped a late model a couple of years ago, but, obviously nothing like it at all. Obviously you're running way faster and a lot of different scenario going on. So, that's really the best I can explain it. It's really not it's kind of pretty hard to explain how it feels, or, how it happens, or what it feels like inside the race car. Just, everything starts to kind of slow down, gets real quiet.
Once again, Taylor Gray at Taylor Gray 17 _ joins the program here you can find him on X. Taylor, obviously you come from a crazy pedigree of drag racing in your family, your grandfather, your dad, even your brother. Why did you go the NASCAR route? Did you ever think of going that route?
No, not really. Honestly, I love the people in drag racing, but I never liked the actual true racing of it. I always loved NASCAR. I always had a passion for it. All my buddies, Ty Gibbs, grew up around him, as a family friend of mine. He was doing the circle track side of things, and that's actually how I met him, was starting racing go-karts at Millbridge, and just kind of grew from there. Honestly, I never really had a huge passion for drag racing. Obviously, it was cool. It's cool going and seeing it every once in a while, and obviously revisiting the people that work in drag racing that, we became so close with. But besides that, I mean, I just never had a passion for it. Never had a, kind of want to go do it. I always just loved the NASCAR side of things. I loved to watch the Cup races every Sunday whenever I was little. And yeah, it kind of just came from there, honestly. I mean, no one really was huge into it. My grandfather circle track raced whenever he was younger, way before my time. And that was really about it. I was kind of the first one to get back into it. I mean, Tanner had done it a little bit before me, but then went and drag raced, and I was kind of the first one to really submerge myself back into it.
Once again, Taylor Gray joining the program. Taylor, you got Jeff Hensley as your crew chief this year. He's got a bunch of experience. How refreshing is it to have a guy that basically is your offensive coordinator? If we're talking about a football term, you're the quarterback, he's the offensive coordinator. How refreshing is it to have a guy that has that much experience above the pit box for you?
It's awesome. I mean, just go look at our results, right? I mean, you said it right. We only had 3 top 5s last year, and right now we should have 3 top 5s. Just, we don't get wrecked at Daytona. So, I mean, just looking at that and realizing how well we've done so far this year. I mean, granted, the first 2 races are speedways, but I think we proved ourselves that we're going to be contenders every week by, going out into Vegas. And, we didn't execute like we wanted to. But, we led some laps and, ran top 5 all night pretty much coming from 19th to the top 5. So I think we kind of proved ourselves and proved everyone that, we're not just going to be fast on speedways. We're going to be fast a mile and a half too. And the same with short tracks. So, it's awesome. It makes it a whole lot more fun. I can tell you that.
Last but not least for you, my friend, obviously, like I said at the very beginning, in which you just mentioned 3 top 5s, you already got 2 of them under your belt already. What's it going to take for you to not just get those 4th place finishes, but start getting those 3rds, those 2nds, even potentially getting those wins down the road?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we're starting off by just being there, right? We're finishing top 5 every week. We have top 5 speed every week. Really, truly, we have, some top 3 speed most of the time. Just need to get a little better at executing on my part. And, as a team, we've never worked together besides these first 3 races. I mean, the only person that is the same on my team is my underneath guy and my front end guy, Jake and Ed. I mean, those are the only 2 guys that are the same from last year. I mean, it's my truck chief's different, Alec, my interior guy, obviously, Jeff's my crew chief, and I should say Jake, my engineer, is also the same. We worked together closely for a few years, but I mean, for the most part, it's a pretty new team. We've never worked together. I mean, first time I ever met Jeff was a few months before he came to work at Tricon. So, I mean, honestly, getting a better relationship with everyone. I mean, we've all meshed really well together this quickly and this so far, but just continuing that on and, just starting to execute at a higher level.
At Taylor Gray 17 _. You can find him on X, Twitter, whatever the hell you want to call it. Taylor, thank you so much for coming on the program, my friend. Wish you the best of luck throughout the season, and I'll see you at a racetrack soon, my friend.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Once again, that was Taylor Gray joining the program. Let's dive on in to some news and notes right now.
What's still hot? It's time to upgrade you on the latest news in NASCAR.
What is still hot? Boy, oh boy, we are going to be a little bit crazy in the next couple of days with March Madness, but we still got to talk about our NASCAR, and what a better way to bring the fire with making it hot than the absolute electricity that we saw on the racetrack come Sunday. And this guy was there to watch it all unfold and get crazy content for our YouTube channel on Front Stretch and youtube.com/Front Stretch. The man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Trey Lyle. Trey, we saw one heck of a race, my friend. First and foremost, thanks for coming on. Second off, it's been a long time since we've seen a short track race that good. Where does that one rank in your neck of the woods?
It rings up there. I mean, if you want a really good breakdown of some of the best races, go to the Happy Hour podcast. You guys can go to, I think it's still up, the Front Stretch Twitter, or X, whatever the crap Elon wants to call it. you can vote on what is the best race in NASCAR history. I was the moderator of the vote during the Happy Hour podcast. Otherwise, we would have an even number. So I decided to abstain myself. The one that I would have picked did not get in, and I have argued it for the last 48 hours, it feels like at this point, because I was Tuesday night, and this is Wednesday night recording, but, I'll keep arguing it. But if you think, we'll see if I'm right in the end, because currently, as we are recording this, the key word is the race that got picked ahead of my choice for being the best one is might not even make it out of the play-in. So let's just put it that way. All right, I'm doing good, Brian. That was an incredible race. It was a surprising race. It shocked you. But then if you take like a moment of reflection, it shouldn't have, given all the key kind of factors that led into it. If you look at how practice and qualifying went, especially qualifying, where felt like only Ryan Blaney could put a clean lap down. And in the truck race, you saw a massive amount of tire wear. You saw these moments where felt like 10 more wrecks could have happened. It wasn't the tire wear to the level we saw on Sunday, but it was some sense of that. And then Sunday, it was like Goodyear decided to be like, all right, you want tire wear? We're going to drop the mic. And they went basically all the way up to the limit of between great and an S show. And they got right there. And it delivered a great race, especially as it went on. And ultimately, I mean, 52 lead changes, smashes the record that was 40, which was set in 1991. I think only Tom Bowles was alive then, covering NASCAR. And I personally think that if you are gonna go to a South Boston, if you're gonna go to a Hickory, if you're gonna go to any of these local short tracks across America and watch a Cars Tour race, for example, that is the type of racing you're going to see, where you save your stuff, and ultimately you look at the three guys who won. And I know I'm ranting kind of here. I feel like you a little bit. But the three guys who had the best finish are the three oldest drivers in the sport, because one, they were used to a Cup Series where this mattered, and two, they were the most patient throughout the day, and that's what led them to the best result.
Now, I want to talk about, before we dive into Coda, Trey, I want to talk about, you were mentioning on Happy Hour yesterday, Jeff Gluck's poll, and you guys did a survey that you can find on our NASCAR, on our X, Twitter, whatever the hell you want to call it, at Front Stretch. This race only got 87%, over 35,000 votes were cast. Why did the fans not think it was in the 90% projectile ranking? Was it because of the winner? Was it because just how bad the tires were at the end of the run? Why did the fans only think it was 87% on the good scale?
So we decided, I'm going to call it the Denny Hamlin delirium, or Denny Hamlin, the Denny Hamlin tax. And maybe it used to be the Joey Logano or Kyle Busch tax. And then, you also have the Chase Elliott surplus, where if Chase Elliott wins, you get 3 to 4 more points. Well, here you get, 5 more points going down. So for the rest, I have no idea. My question is, what do you want? What do you want from a race then?
I mean, yeah. I loved it. Every single thing. And I truly believe, Trey, if we had a different winner, if we had a Kyle Larson or a Chase Elliott, God forbid Chase Elliott, it would be in the 94 to 95% ranking.
God, Chase Elliott, Brian, you don't like when Chase Elliott wins? Isn't what you're trying to say?
Listen, the fans do. I'm not a fan, but the fans love it.
But you just said, God forbid Chase Elliott doesn't win.
No, I said God forbid Chase Elliott wins, because then we would know all the crazy Chase Elliott fans would go ballistic and think he's going to be the next Jeff Gordon,
I will admit on this podcast that I did tell Michael Massey I did not want Ty Gibbs to win. But that was not because I don't want Ty Gibbs to win. That's because I don't want to be at a race where Ty Gibbs wins and I have Ed Lane blow up my phone for 4 hours while the press conference is going on. That is the only reason why.
Shout out Ed Lane. We are a big fan of Ed in this household.
I think that's a fair reason. So,
fair, okay. Yep. Last but not least, on Bristol, the tire issue. Too much.
Was it an issue?
not enough, or was it just right?
It was just right with a tweak. It was definitely, you know, I would say if you can get it, and maybe they keep the same tire, they do the resin, and teams come back with adjustments, and they can make it last 80 laps, that is your sweet spot. And that's what Chris Gabehart and Denny Hamlin said. If you keep the tire the same, you keep the resin the same, they came back a week later, most teams would probably be able to make it to 80 laps. And to me, if you can make it for a 500-mile race, you give them between 6, they were at 9 tires for a 500-lap race, then they ultimately got a 10th. That's fine. Like, you basically double, like you do, maybe you do 9 to 8 for a 500-mile race, you're making it 80 laps a stint. That's roughly 5 stops if it stays green. I think that's where you would look into it. So I think just a little bit just to get it 80, but that could be keep the tire the same, you keep the resin the same. The teams come back with more of an anticipation, because I think a big part of the reason you saw the madness at the start was teams relied too much on the history and just assuming the track would lay rubber, and they didn't adjust to it. It's the reason Tyler Reddick got wrecked out of the race, because he, you know, after that first caution, he stayed out and his tires were shot and he got wrecked. So I think with adjustments, if you can get to 80 to 100 laps, that is the sweet spot. And that might just be the teams coming back with the same circumstances.
Trey, let's move over now on to COTA. They're moving up the restart zone because of the plethora of cautions that we saw last year. Even with them moving up the restart zone, are we going to see as much carnage and chaos as we saw in the past year and even the past 2 years, to be honest?
Yeah, we'll see. I'm always a we'll see. When my expectation is the restarts are always going to be insane. It seems to have calmed down with the restart zone moves, but you never know. I mean, it's going to be dive bomb city, okay? It just is. Like, I don't think that's going to change. So you're going to see a giant fan of cars. You're going to see dive bombs into turn 1. And that's basically, like, that's what's going to happen. I just don't think that will change. Do I think it will not be to the extreme? Probably, if that makes sense.
Let's dive on into our soundbite of the week.
Well, Tony, what angered you at the end of the race? What did you take issue with?
What the hell do you think I was mad about? Dumb little runs us clear down to the infield. He wants to about everybody else, and he's the one that drives like a little. I'm gonna bust his ass.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
And short track racing.
It's time for the sound bites of the week.
To come up with a tire package that generated more tire wear. That was the request from NASCAR and the teams. And we feel like we had a very successful test. We feel like we had a very successful race in the fall of last year, because we did exactly that. We ran a full fuel stop, definitely saw wear, but we thought it was spot on. So now we're trying to understand what's different. Why is the racetrack behaving differently this weekend than what it did a year ago? It's the same package. It's the same tire combination. Obviously, the difference is resin was placed on the lower groove instead of the PJ1. Yet I still think the racetrack should be taking rubber as it did last fall. Took rubber immediately during that race. So still a bit of an unknown as far as why it's not behaving the same way, that being the racetrack. But that's kind of what we know now. Obviously, everybody's kind of in the same boat. Some guys are able to manage through it a little bit better than others, but it's still a tough situation, and we're just going to have to try to understand exactly what's happening, what's different, and adjust from there.
Once again, that was Goodyear director Greg Stucker on the tire issues. Trey, was it the difference with the resin versus PJ1 mixed with the tire? Was it the tire mixed with the temperatures? Just what was the main catalyst from talking with the drivers and talking with the teams after the race, if they even knew?
Science. That's what Goodyear
Ooh.
said.
Ooh.
Yeah, I think personally it was a little bit of everything. It was the tire itself, the fact they switched from PJ1 to resin, and the colder temperatures, but ultimately the reason the tire wear was so bad is the track did not take rubber. The track did not take, like, that was it. That's, I don't know. I'm not a scientist. It seemed mixed reviews of the car, like the weather, the overcast, because you think about it, this was the first time they did a spring race in 4 years, and there's the temperature in spring in the mountains is way different than the summertime in the mountains. And I think personally, ultimately, it will be interesting to see where they go from here, because I personally think this is a step in the right direction. Because here, like, the horsepower argument that we had all last week ended this week because of the tire. And Denny Hamlin, and I said this post race, and I still kind of feel this way. Denny Hamlin and Chris Gabehart were the perfect two people to win that race. And the key word is, and people might get mad at me for this, but because those two will be willing to explain why this was good and why this is a step in the right direction. And they're more willing to do that. If we had a different winner, it might have just been what half the time I heard was like, I had fun. The track didn't take rubber. But you had Gabehart sitting there like saying, we should not blame Goodyear for this. Goodyear needs to give us a difficult tire. That is the point of this sport. Like, you know, we shouldn't be running qualifying laps. Like, Denny saying this is the first time in a long time they put it back in the driver's hands. And, you know, I just think those two, even though were the perfect representation for NASCAR to, you know, come out and explain what happened, because one, their backgrounds make them knowledgeable about the situation, and two, they don't give a bleep, and like in terms of they are willing to talk about it. Because I talked to Chad Canals, and he was like, it could have been this, it could have been that. It you know, you could tell he seemed frustrated because he didn't understand. I don't know if he didn't understand, he just didn't expect it. Whereas, and they won, so they, you know, maybe if they finish fourth, they're not as giddy. But I'll tell you this: Gabehart was proud of the performance they had at Martinsville last year when they finished second, even though they missed the playoffs, and you could sense it a little bit, even though that you could sense the disappointment as well. So I feel like if they finished fourth, like they still would have been somewhat jovial about it. Not as jovial because they admitted like this is a biased point of view. They won the race, but I still think this was a perfect. They both were a perfect representation of trying for the fan to understand why this was so good, why it happened, and why it needs to continue. I don't know why I removed myself. Clicky.
Trey, let's dive on into the latest with some final thoughts.
It's going to be a drag race all the way back to the start-finish line. No caution. They're side by side, right to the line. Big crash. Here they come. Checkered flag.
The checkered flag is out, and it's time for the final thoughts.
Final thoughts are in the air, Trey. Whatever you want to rant, whatever you want to rave, whatever you want to, just any type of talk. Now is the time to do so.
Can we just shout out this season? Like, this season's delivered. And I think an underrated part, so I'm not sure what package they ran at Bristol, but I'm almost sure it was the intermediate package, or it was some variation of it compared to the short track package. And that might have been a reason why the race was so good, because the intermediate package continues to deliver. But the season has been awesome so far. You're having record ratings. You've had two of the best races that I can remember in Atlanta, and then this race at Bristol. So, you know, if you're Marcus Smith, you're feeling really good right now. And I just think your ratings are up. if you're NASCAR, I think the bold move to move Atlanta to the second race of the year and, I guess go away from the dirt race, thank God, it has delivered. Because I think the lowest watched race was, Bristol at 3.9 million?
Yeah.
So that's awesome. And viewership's going to go down as the season goes on because football and other stuff. But this season has been delivering. And all I have to say is embrace it. If you're a fan, embrace it and enjoy it because it's been fun to watch.
Some things sometimes just fall into your lap. A lot of people, let's be honest, thought I would never get married, and look where I am now. I am
still
married.
don't believe it.
Honestly,
I've never met your wife. I've never
know.
met your wife, so she could be a figment of your imagination.
No, Massey has, and she wants to kill Massey, but that's a story for a different day.
Y'all could be colluding, so
shut up. Anyway, a lot of people thought I would never get married, and I did. A lot of people thought the short track package would never, ever fix, but I did. I'm pulling a Colin Coward. I'm doing a crazy analogy here, but just bear with me. Sometimes, out of the craziness of this universe, things can happen to perfection. And what happened on Sunday was perfection. Do we know how? No. Do we know why? No. Do we know if we're ever going to see it again? No. But let's just absolutely go back and just appreciate this. This is what we all wanted. Tire wear. Sure, it could have been better, but literally looking at the in-car cameras from Kyle Larson to Chase Briscoe when they had fresh tires, it honest God felt like NASCAR 08 when you're on easy and you're blowing through the field. It felt and looked absolutely incredible. So instead of trying to compare this to other races, let's just appreciate the fact that we saw it because we were all expecting a god-awful race. And instead, we saw one for the ages. Once again, a big thanks to Taylor Gray for coming on the program. Big thanks to Ryan Hines for setting that up. We were supposed to do that in Vegas, but our schedules just didn't match up, so we had to do it a couple weeks later. But hey, we got it done, so big thanks to Taylor. And I would not be surprised to see Taylor Gray get into victory lane sooner rather than later. Trey, this is a part of the time where I usually promote you, so I'm going to actually just let you promote yourself. And then since you're the podcast manager, promote our upcoming podcast, brother.
At Trey Lyle VT for expert opinions. Our next podcast will be...
Kidding.
Bryan Nolen is no longer the host of Bringing the
That
Heat.
was uncalled for. Absolutely uncalled for.
I think that's a good way to end. There we go. All right. But at Trey Lyle VT, our next podcast is Tino with Through the Gears. You can watch that on YouTube, youtube.com/frontstretch or the Front Stretch Podcast Network. So yeah, all our podcasts except Stock Car Scoop are on the NASCAR side are on YouTube, including this one. So youtube.com/frontstretch. Subscribe to that. Also, if you could do me a wee little favor, if you can also subscribe to our podcast feed and leave a 5-star review as well. And then share this with a friend. Share happy hour. That's a fun time. We're cooking up some good guests in the coming weeks for this podcast. For happy hour as well. Through the Gears is doing great. Stock Car Scoop, which is your quick post-race reaction from Adam Cheek. That's on Sunday nights. So great podcast coming here from frontstretch.com.
Once again, big thanks to Taylor Gray, big thanks to Trey Lyle, big thanks to everybody at the Sports program at the Bryan Nolen. Next week on the program, it's going to be a fun one. We're going to be diving into a two-part interview. Part one that Mr. Michael Massey conducted, one of the amazing humans of the NASCAR industry, Jerry Nadeau. A great interview leading up to the Richmond weekend in which he had a tragic accident that left him permanently impacted in everyday life. So he's going to share a little bit about that. So part one of the interview with Jerry Nadeau is coming up next week. For Trey Lyle and everybody, I'm Bryan Nolen. We out. See ya.
Hey everyone, Dalton Hopkins here with FrontStretch.com. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and check out one of the 2 videos next to me to see more of our racing content.